Hello and welcome to the Enterprise Talk Conversation Series, a peer knowledge resource by the CXOs for the CXOs. Now to our host, Kanika Goswami.
Hi, we welcome you to our podcast On Stage with Enterprise Thought Leaders. My name is Kanika and I'm the managing editor of EnterpriseTalk, which is an enterprise technology publication. We've engaged in conversations with global thought leaders and industry experts over the last couple of years, and they've reached over 1.3 million business leaders worldwide. As AI adoption accelerates, many organizations are rushing to deploy tools without a clear strategy. The annual research released in April by Orgvue, the organizational design and planning software platform, reveals that 39% of business leaders made employees redundant as a result of deploying AI. Of these, 55 admit they made wrong decisions about those redundancies. So this roughly translates to about 4 in 10 organizations packing off employees due to AI deployment, and over half of them now admit that they did a mistake. This report is based on a survey of about 1,000 C-suite senior decision makers at medium and large organizations last year, and that's quite a scary number. So, what is actually happening? And to understand that, today we speak with Orla Daly. She's a Chief Information Officer, the CIO at Skillsoft, to understand why AI isn't plug and play, but purpose and plan. Welcome to the show, Orla. It's great to have you here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
A little bit of background information about Orla. She brings more than 25 years of experience in IT and business. She joined Skillsoft as a CIO in March of 2022. At Skillsoft, Orla is responsible for leading the digital and information technology team, which includes the data and analytics for the Percipio platform. Orla is a problem solver and change leader. She most recently served as Vice President of Digital and IT Organizational Change Management at National Grid. As a member of this team, Orla was responsible for driving the transformation of the IT organization to move to a product operating model, which is focused on delivering improved business outcomes by reimagining operations and processes, leveraging technology, and adopting agile ways of working. Orla attended Dublin City University, where she studied international marketing and languages and completed an MSc in IT at Stirling University. Did I miss out anything, Orla?
No, that was pretty comprehensive.
It's good. So your team tells me you bring a unique perspective on AI adoption from your CIO role, where you've led the company and your customers to harness her IT and digital transformation expertise to spur business growth. With the prior leadership roles at ExxonMobil and EMC, you forged strong businesses, IT partnerships that have led to significant transformations. And I will say no more, because I think this actually sums up what we need to say about a CIO in any case.
Yes. It's all about transformation.
So, yeah. Why do more organizations rush today to deploy tools without a clear strategy? Because AI adoption is accelerating. Is it the keeping up with the Jones kind of a thing, or do you think they really feel the need to, or they foresee some kind of massive advantage coming from it?
I think ultimately it's a little bit of both. So I think, there is a lot of excitement and people want to be part of that and really, see how they can unlock the benefits for their organization or for their individual productivity. And then there is a little bit of, I think it is evolving rapidly, and therefore there's a fear of potentially being left behind if you don't get in the game. I think naturally, as we think about AI and it being technology, there's also just the natural tendency that people learn by doing. And with AI, it is pretty accessible now. So I think people are jumping in, and those that are curious in particular are experimenting and are seeing the benefits in terms of just at an individual level, how it can help make your routine tasks, I guess, easier. And therefore there's just a sense of excitement that creates, that people are then looking to see how they can adopt that in a broader sense. And therefore, as a result of that, I think there is a little bit of a groundswell that's happening, which is great. But then also creates challenges in terms of how do you then take that and scale it across an organization to really see the benefits at an organizational level.
So this is a question to you as a CIO. It's not a part of the generic conversation about what others are doing. Do you think it is smart to jump into a new technology without adequate preparation? If it is not, then why are technology leaders taking that risk at all?
I think because there is a lot of benefit, and we're seeing that even, with individuals in particular, I guess, seeing the productivity gains, and it's just making their job easier, and therefore they're jumping in and adopting it. Equally, on a product side, there is a competitive advantage for a number of companies in being able to leverage AI to either unlock new business use cases or to be able to more efficiently execute against their business. And obviously at Skillsoft, we're around driving personalized and interactive learning experiences, and AI is just a huge enabler in driving that. And therefore, part of it is, I think, just staying ahead of the curve in being able to, in our case, leverage AI to deliver better learner experiences. So I think there's just a lot of motivation to get at the benefit that AI promises, and therefore experimentation, I think, is a key part of that. The learning drives innovation, we often see, and therefore, I think it's not necessarily a bad thing that people are jumping in without having an overarching strategy, but very quickly, I think we're also seeing that there's only so far you can take a POC or some of those grassroots efforts, and it needs to be paired with also some just thoughtful approach and a strategy ultimately around how you want to adopt AI within your organization, so that those early learnings and those proof of concepts can really turn into something meaningful that drives a better outcome for the organization.
Right. So we also learned that AI regret stems more from governance gaps rather than technology failures. Anything you'd like to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think about AI and, through another lens, it really is about a workforce transformation in one sense, because what AI is allowing us to do is really rethink how people do work and execute work. And therefore it is, the technology, but it's also the people, the process, and how all that comes together. And any CIO or person in technology knows transformation is hard, and it's multifaceted. And I think this is no different. And therefore, while the technology is a key component of it, it's everything that surrounds that that's equally important in terms of how do we ultimately get the success and avoid the regrets. Because I think with, some of that experimentation, obviously, we're trying to strike the right balance between giving people autonomy while having central governance to make sure that we have ethical use of AI, we're protecting our data, and we have the right foundational elements in place. But equally, we want to and that the right people are involved in the decision-making process. And I think some of the regrets come from either we jump in too fast and therefore, the solution ultimately isn't going to scale. We haven't involved the right people in the decision-making process in terms of how is AI going to change how work is getting done and what are the tasks that are being replaced and what's the, end-to-end implications of making those changes within the organization. Equally, I think we've all seen we can underestimate the complexity of ultimately bringing some of these AI use cases to life. Most of us are burdened with quite heavy legacy infrastructure. Maybe our data is not as clean as we would like it to be, etc. And therefore, how do we make sure that we've got a thoughtful approach so that we can see through the activities to ultimately get to that end benefit? And that, a big piece of this also is obviously then having that feedback loop and making sure we've got the right KPIs and measures. So I think when you take a step back, it is really about a transformation of your workforce as well as your company, and therefore requires us to think not just about the technology, but the whole framework in which we execute and how ultimately all of that is impacted by these AI efforts.
Right. So, do you feel there is a need for a strategic approach to AI implementation? And would having a culture of continuous learning and adaptability help there?
Absolutely. And I think because AI, it's been around for a long time, but I think in the scale that we're seeing it being adopted right now, obviously there's a lot of newness and Now we're getting into agentic AI, which is a whole other area. And therefore, we are continuing to see just the skills gap widening in terms of people's understanding, as well as just their confidence in being able to responsibly use AI. There is a lot of excitement at the board levels, at senior management level, but then, equally, we're seeing that at the front line, there is a divide in terms of just that level of aptitude as well as confidence in leveraging the new tools and taking advantage of AI. So I think that's part of the strategic approach is how do you move the whole organization along to take advantage of this? And learning is a key part of that. Equally, I think the AI, is reshaping organizations. And while there's a lot of fear maybe in terms of the roles that it will eliminate it, I think a lot of what we're seeing is it's less about eliminating complete roles and it's more about modifying the makeup of those roles and the skills that are needed within a role description. And as we think about that, it requires some thought from an organizational perspective to say, well, which roles are most impacted? Which roles can I evolve in the most optimal way, taking advantage of now both the human and AI working together? And how do I then continue to upskill my organization in that context, which really then gets into your overall strategy, understanding the skills that you have in the organization today, where you want to be, 2 years from now, and how do you then evolve the organization and the individuals to transition on that journey with you.
So, and this question is just again from your experience as a CIO. Do you think it is smarter and easier and more cost effective to hire people with AI skills or to upgrade the existing team members that you have in your organization to be able to meet the requirements of the new tools or the new deployments? Which is easier, which is better?
Yeah, no, great question. And I think like everything, it has to be a balance. In some cases, you need a quick set of access to a set of skills that you don't have within the organization, and therefore potentially hiring is an option. That said, it's super competitive as we think about AI skills, and obviously it's not like there's a large pool. Equally though, we also see just the lifespan of skills is shortening rapidly, and therefore hiring your way out of this is not a long-term answer. It really is about how do you upskill the organization. And equally, obviously with individuals within your organization, they have a lot of knowledge on how your business runs. And as I think about AI and where it can bring benefit, you really do need to understand your business and therefore where are the biggest opportunities to apply AI. It's hard for someone, outside coming in to necessarily see that out of the gate. But then there are some discrete, maybe technical skills, etc., where it can be beneficial to be able to get that into the organization quickly and then, use those individuals that you hire to help as part of the upskilling and training of your internal team members. But that all said, it's evolving rapidly, and therefore, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, anyone you've hired also equally has to make sure that they're keeping up with the trends and the new capabilities. Therefore, that continuous learning and engagement has to just be part of the fabric and the culture of the organization for both your internal team members and anyone that you've even hired recently, so that you continue to keep pace with the changes.
Right, because that's a very difficult question for most CIOs because you need to keep a balance. And you have to keep a balance in an extremely dynamic environment. Things are still changing. Skills still need to be upgraded, even if you come in with all the certificates and degrees. So, yeah.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Now, from the deployment point of view, there is an opinion that AI deployments are doing better as POCs, proof of concepts, rather than actual projects. Do you have any observations on this?
Yes, I think that's natural. And I think this is not unique to AI. I think, traditionally POCs have been easier in some sense to make successful than delivering anything at scale. When we think about proof of concepts, it's generally executed in a controlled environment. It has a very specific and narrow scope. And often either it's been sponsored by, a senior executive, or it's somebody at a grassroots level who's very passionate and excited about the POC that they're engaged in, and therefore there's just a high level of engagement to make it successful. So it is somewhat executed in a bubble, and therefore I think just easier to make POCs in general successful. In order to scale that, that's where I think the hard work begins, in terms of how do you then integrate what you've learned into the flow of work and into your organization. And this is where you've just got to deal with the reality of your legacy environment, your landscape. Change management is a huge part of that. Obviously, now you're rolling something out to not just individuals who are excited about this project and engaged in it, but a lot who may be resistant or fearful of the change that it's bringing. And equally, as we scale it, often the results are not immediate, and therefore you need to ensure that there is the appropriate engagement and sponsorship to see it through and to give it time to really bed into the organization and see the benefits that it can bring.
Right. And now we'll circle back to the report we were referring right in the beginning, that 4 in 10 organizations or CIOs are making employees redundant due to AI deployment, and over half of them come back saying that it was a mistake probably. What can leaders do proactively to overcome this problem?
So I think
Strategy, everything. Yeah.
I think it starts with determining the role of AI in your organization. And obviously, you can only do that in the context of what we know today, and it is evolving rapidly. But I think at the same time, it is important to take a step back and have a point of view on looking at the shape of the organization, the roles you have, how can AI help, and how is it going to ultimately change the organization, whether that's internally in terms of how the work gets executed or how you're going to market and the products that you're offering. And once you have an assessment of that, it's then breaking it down to the next level in terms of how are the roles impacted? Where do we see either roles being partially replaced by AI, or where do we see that real partnership between AI and humans, and how is that going to work together? And therefore, what are the skills that your agents need and the skills that your individuals need? And therefore, creating a plan to think about how you're going to approach that within the organization. Equally, I think, having a roadmap and being able to share a vision with the broader organization is super important, and bringing individuals along on the journey. I think there's a lot of curiosity. There's a lot of people that are willing to lean in and adopt AI, but also are looking for some level of education to build their confidence in, embracing something that's net new. So I think a big part of it is really just, again, understanding the shape of your organization, bringing people along the journey with you in terms of how they're getting more confident and familiar, and then building that continuous loop of learning so that as things are evolving, you can constantly be agile and react to how those changes are happening so that you can continue to adapt and ultimately see the benefits, as close to real time as possible.
So these are the questions I had. Did I miss anything that you want to speak about as a CIO?
I think it's an exciting time in terms of just what AI can bring to the organizations. And therefore, it's important for us ultimately to strike the right balance between that excitement and how it can deliver real benefits for the organization. And therefore, just looking at it through that lens in terms of it is multifaceted. It's not just about the technology, it's about changing how organizations get work done. And therefore, while the technology is a key enabler, equally important is the change management, the upskilling, the reskilling, and just building people's confidence in terms of how they can take advantage of AI and continue to kind of evolve their individual careers and develop in the context of the new business environment.
Right. And thank you so much for that, Orla. We had a very interesting discussion. I learned a lot from the CIO perspective. It's very easy to judge from outside that jobs are being lost, but one needs to understand what is happening inside the organizations and what their business imperatives are. So thanks for the insight. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being with us. Please do follow us on social media for regular updates and new content.